Well, I think Iowa clearly is in the tournament. Both these teams are kind of reeling a little bit, Roger. I think the Hawkeyes are 1-4 in their last 5. They got beat by Indiana twice in that stretch, and Ohio State, and the weird thing is, I think they've played okay in some of those games. They went cold, obviously, in that Indiana game, in that second half. I think I think some of it too is the Big Ten cannibalizes itself. I'm hopeful for the whole league that when the tournament starts, that they'll, seeing some fresh faces and new blood. And there's always the other team's going to be unfamiliar, with that team. I think the Big Ten will have some teams this year that can make some runs, and I think Iowa's set up for it. I know that they give up a lot of threes, and I know they're a little suspect defensively, but I think that will in the tournament when they play that kind of 2-3, 3-2 zone, I think that'll be okay for a while because teams don't see zones very much. So, and look, when you have Garza, you can ride Garza a long ways. So if they get a couple bounces their way, it could be, this could be a potential Final Four team.
Everyone, welcome back. It's Roger Abel with Behind the Wealth. I'm fortunate enough today to have what I'd call as much of a local legend as I know here in Eastern Iowa, Mike Grimm. And Mike's actually my cousin, and we explored doing a show. What was that? Maybe 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Locally in the Minneapolis area, on a financial topic, and Mike has his experience in this area, and if people don't know Mike actually is the voice of the Golden Gophers, or when I refer to him here, the Gary Dolphin of Minnesota. So
right.
I'd like to welcome Mike.
Hey, Roger, how's it going? Great to see you. Yeah, I was thinking it's been 20 years exactly, almost 20 years exactly, since the last time I was regularly on my daily Mike Grimm show on WMT. So it's been... to say local legend, people are probably like, "Who's that clown that he's got next to him on the screen there?" But yeah, for a time I was on radio every day, and this is kind of a funny story. The show was called "What's Happening" that I hosted, and after a while I just started calling it the Mike Grimm Show, just because that I was young and wanted my own show, and it kind of just morphed into that. So by the end, I had coffee mugs and T-shirts that said the Mike Grimm Show.
Well, I think it's interesting that you did a financial show 20 years ago, and today our office, Premier Investments of Iowa, is the financial show that we've actually been on the air since March of 2009. So we're the longest running live show, and we started out on the Bob Bruce radio experience.
Yep.
Because Bob wanted to have his show.
Yeah.
And we've been doing this for 12 years. It'll be 12 years next month. And I just started thinking about these parallels between what's happened when you were doing this versus what's happening now, where the industry's gone. And one of the things that really got me interested about how you did your show back then, and to get some insight, because we've talked briefly about it, but not really in depth. And hopefully, I know you're 20 years older. Hopefully the memory hasn't completely shot you at this point. But we're seeing this resurgence in the day trading type phenomenon. And I guess maybe take us back to when your show started and talk a little bit to me about, what was happening at that point in time with markets and how people were feeling and how the structure of your actual show was.
Yeah, for sure. It's weird. I could remember stuff from then better than I can remember what I did yesterday. So somewhere I've got this memory of stuff years gone by, but I can barely remember what I had for breakfast this morning. So I can probably recall quite a bit of stuff. But the show, this part I'm a little murky on. I'm going to say the show probably started in about 96 or so, mid 96 to 97, somewhere in there. And this is how it kind of picked up steam. So it started as we called it Money on Mondays was the name of the show, and it was every Monday. And we did it the first while. It was the first Monday of every month. And it got to be pretty popular. It was the late Augie Garino was at that time he worked for A.G. Edwards, which not even, are they still, have they been merged? Have they have a different name now maybe? I'm not even sure.
Yeah, in 07, 08, somewhere in there, they actually merged with Wachovia,
Okay.
who is then bought by Wells Fargo. So the old legacy A.G. Edward guys who are still with him would be with Wells Fargo at this point.
Gotcha. Well, anyway, so it started with him, and it was just the first Monday of every month for an hour. And we were just taking phone calls from listeners. And we would talk about the markets, we'd talk about different things. And we were taking phone calls from listeners. And back then we didn't even have a call screener. It was just, I'd just hit the button and say, hello, you're on the air. It's Money on Mondays. And they say, this is George from Central City, and I've got money in this, and what do you think? And people really kind of caught on. So, and then they got some success off it. They started to find people, found what they thought they were talking about interesting and compelling. And so they started to get some clients. So they wanted to expand. So we went to 2 hours and easily filled that. And then we went to every other Monday, and I'm going to say within a year it was every Monday for 2 full hours. And even up to this point, this day, and I've done a lot of shows over the years where, I spent time in St. Louis, hosting Cardinals post-game shows, and you're getting a lot of calls. I'd say that 2 hour stretch was, of anything I've done, the most generated the most calls, the most, hey, I want to know this. Well, he brought on Mark Nolan. Augie Garino brought on Mark Nolan, and Mark then became almost like a play-by-play guy. Like, he would legitimately, they'd have ratings on the stocks. So some guy would call in, and I'm just going to throw this out because it was at the time a local stock. Hey, I got 200 shares of McLeod, let's say, and he said, well, right now we currently have a buy on that stock. It's at 22.5. We have it projected to go to 28. We recommend to buy that stock. And this is part of the day trading part I think you're talking about. We were getting calls on all kinds of stocks, and then Mark and Augie would have their info in front of them. And, we'd have to disclaim everything. Like, it's, hey, we're not, this is just generic advice. We don't know everyone's individual situation. But it was legal, and I don't know what the rules are now for what you guys can do, but it was legal then. He could say what the company recommended. And he'd say, we have a sell on that. We have a buy on that. We have a hold on that. Well, in 97, 98, 99, there's a buy on everything, right? Like, almost everything has a buy on it.
If it had a .com behind it, it had a buy.
And so it did. It gained steam. I can remember, too, people talking about, even people I worked with at the station, they'd head home for lunch, and they'd flip on CNBC, and they'd be paying attention to what I've got this, I've got that, and they're watching the ticker. And I think people still do that. And in between then and now, I think that faded, other than, Roger, people like you would obviously pay a close attention. But I don't think, like you said, the day trader, like, I wasn't a day trader. I wasn't investing on a daily basis, but I was still enthralled by it. And I'd watch that ticker, and I knew I had this, and I knew I had that, and we watched some stuff ride up and knew some stuff ride down. And I clearly, in radio, you don't make a fortune, so it wasn't like I had a big number, but a lot of people did. And yeah, eventually that tech bubble kind of popped. But from, we're talking 90, so that show started, I'm going to say, in mid 97. I left the station in July of 01, and we were still doing the show at that point. So, once I left, I don't remember exactly who took it over, but it continued for a little bit. Mark Nolan then left. He went out to Las Vegas and started his own deal out there. Augie passed away, and I think the show kind of just faded off. But yeah, it was fun. It was an enjoyable show. I learned so much. I think listeners really appreciated it back then too.
Now, I think that one of the things that intrigued me was this was at kind of the height of the day trading bubble. And if you think about how information flowed, radio at that time and TV was the primary source of information flow, right? And I think you hit it right on the head when you said for the last 20 years, the day trader has seemed to just kind of fade away. And we've seen this transition in our industry away from that of picking individual stocks, individual bonds, what's the next home run, to diversify portfolios, and then more to this pure financial planning side up until like the last 12 months. And the last 12 months, as soon as coronavirus happened, we've seen this resurgence of day traders. And I don't know, there's the theory out there that this is potentially because these are all, gamblers that had no games to put money on. So they said, hey, we'll go to the ultimate gambling table, the stock market. And it's been fueled by some different things. And I don't know how much you follow it, but you're reading the news every day.
Right.
But I feel like the Reddit and the Wall Street bets and the internet now is the new information flow. How is that like? How do you see that affecting you? You see in sports, is the information flow still radio? Is it more internet now? I mean, how do you feel about that?
Well, I think everything has changed, right? And I think I'd even add in, like, once the pandemic hit, people are at home, so you have more time. You're sitting there on the computer. Well, hey, I heard about this stock, or I did some research between my actual job. I'm going to sit here at the computer because I'm at home. If you're at work, you might not try to pull that off, but if you're at home, I think it's given people some more freedom to do some stuff there that they normally wouldn't, because the workday switch now. A lot of people, for me even, my workday is unique anyway for my job, but I talk to all kinds of people who are like, yeah, I probably am more productive working at home than I was in the office, but my hours have changed. I'm taking 3 hours in the middle of the day off now and going to the bank and going out to, grab a bite to eat or grocery shopping, where before I'm stuck at my cubicle. Well, I'm taking 3 hours off in the middle of the day. When it used to be, I'd get home at 5 and work was done. I'd make a meal, I'd watch some TV, maybe watch a game or a movie. Not me personally, I'm just saying this is just in general terms. And then now I took the 3 hours off in the middle of the day when normally I'd be at my office in a cubicle. Well, now it's 6 at night. I'm going to sit back down and crank out in a couple more hours of work. Then I'm going to go to bed, and then instead of getting up at 8, I get up at 10, or I get up real early, or I can't sleep. You can do work anytime. And so I think people have found, I think it's going to be interesting to see when, quote, things get back to normal, how the workplace will emerge out of that. Certainly there are some jobs that are going to require people to go to work, but I got to believe some companies are going to say, why are we paying thousands of dollars in rent when we had great production from our workers working from home here? We can outfit them with things. So anyway, that's a sidebar to what you're saying. In my job, for example, I do sportscast every day. In addition to my Gopher duties, I'm the sports director at a place called the Minnesota News Network. And I think it's the same back when we were doing the Money on Monday show, we didn't, cell phones were just in their infancy. They were big and clunky, and there certainly weren't smartphones and digital. It was to make a phone call. And so to get stock market up-to-date deal, you either listen to the noon report on the radio, or you watch the news, or you watch CNBC, or it was starting to work. The internet at that point, remember, this is so hard to fathom. The internet in 97 is only, in terms of a mainstream deal, is probably only 3 or 4 years old at that point, right? The internet really came into fruition in the mid-90s, really. I graduated from Luther College in 93. There wasn't an internet. There was, but nobody knew about it, right? So 97, people are at home on their dial-ups trying to, punch in a stock symbol. Well, now you can be anywhere, and you've got a phone, and in about 2 clicks of the button, you can see what your entire portfolio looks like. So that part has changed, and in my job, the same thing. When I was doing Sportscast at WMT, we would run through scores. The morning sports was mostly scores, whether it was last night in high school baseball, Roger Abel hit a home run for Lindmar and they beat Washington 4-2, and you move on and you got, the Hawkeyes did this or the Cyclones did this, and you give the score, right?
I can't believe you remember that.
Well, of course, I remember it all. Yeah, I told you I had a good memory.
Well, I actually went and looked for a Lindmar cap this morning because I knew you were wearing that West Delaware one.
I'm a little tip of the cap, so to speak, to the West Delaware Hawks, of course. But now everyone can get those scores. Like if I want to know what the Lindmar baseball score is, in 2 clicks on my smartphone, I find their Twitter handle or something, and somebody has the score posted. Or if I want to know what the Hawkeye basketball team's doing, who do they play tonight? Oh, Rutgers, boom, I'm clicked on it, and I have it. So from a sportscast standpoint, I've kind of shifted how I do my job. I'm more of a storyteller as opposed to a score giver. So when I give my Minnesota sports in the morning, let's say this morning, for example, there were no games last night, so it's a little hard. But let's say yesterday's sports, the Wolves and the Gophers played on Monday night. It would used to have been, the Gophers beat Nebraska 79-61, and you might give a detail or two. Well, everyone by that time that cares knows the score, right? It's not a problem. So you have to tell the story. So I do post-game interviews, and you do this, and it's like, well, here's how it happened. As opposed to scores, you now have to further advance it and tell a little bit of a story. So even that part's changed, just in the information age that we have now. As they say, info is power, and you've got this little device here, these cell phones, in 2 or 3 clicks of a touchpad, you can access just about any info you want. It's beautiful in one hand, and another hand, it's very distracting. I know my wife and kids sometimes will say, "Can you put your phone down for a minute? We're trying to have a conversation here," and I'll be, "Yeah, you're right," and I'll throw the phone to the side. But it's changed everything, I think.
No, I think that's a really good analysis that you made, because we've seen the same shift in our industry. So what really has happened is information's been completely commoditized, and just telling someone, hey, Apple's good or Apple's bad, no longer is meaningful.
Right, because they can get it.
What's meaningful,
Yeah.
they can get it. It's easy. And like you said, you have to provide the color and the story. And if you think about the financial world, what I think has changed drastically is the color or the commentary that we provide is the production of financial planning and digging deeper to help people do investments. I can't tell you a few people call, hey, what stock should I buy? Well, what do you want to buy?
Yeah.
You have the information we're not researching that. We're trying to help people figure out what steps they need to take in their financial life now to get to retirement, to make it through retirement, and quantify for them how good they're going to do. What's their probability that they'll never run out of money in retirement? Where I'm guessing on the show back in 1999, so let's take the memory back.
Yep.
How many calls did you get to the show saying, hey, tell me how I do a financial plan? I'm not sure they existed outside of an insurance person trying to make some life insurance sale at that point in time.
Well, that's it. We would talk about that some, where, in fact, our disclaimer at the time that we played at the start was, hey, this is not specific for anybody. It's generic advice, and I forget I think we even said if you want specific financial advice relating to your situation, call somebody to figure out your entire portfolio or something like that. But I want to say, if I recall right, I want to say back then. A lot of it was what those guys did was mostly stocks. Now, I don't mean it doesn't have to be specific stocks, although a lot of that at that time was, hey, buy this, buy that, buy this specific stock and watch it, go. There were mutual funds, obviously, and, all that stuff, but much less of a, if you wanted to include, an annuity, let's say, or life insurance or, even now they did obviously IRAs and all that stuff and Roths and what have you. Roths were just kind of starting at that time. It became a really popular investment, and I probably still is. But but I think at that point, and I'm not trying to knock anybody that is selling life insurance now, but now, I don't know how many life insurance policies stockbrokers, quote unquote, sold in the 90s. Now that's all part of everybody's deal. Oh, well, we're going to put you in stocks. We're going to get you, whatever it is. And everyone's got their own philosophy. There are really smart people, and I don't know what yours is, quite frankly, but, really smart people say, oh, you should buy an annuity, or you should buy a life insurance policy. There are really smart people who say that's the dumbest thing you could ever do. So everybody's got their own situation, and I don't, what do you do and how do you handle it? And I suppose some of it depends on how much money you make, how much money you're projected to have, and how do you maximize all those things with what you have to pour into the bucket.
No, and I think that's actually, talking about individual products, I think our industry, at least in our office, has transitioned further than that. We are to the point where we are literally providing financial advice, and that's it. And then whatever product or solution happens to fall in there, it's not a sale. We're going to provide a solution. This is what you need to be successful. We've quantified this through, all the technology and software that's available. And then either you believe in the solution or you don't, right? You believe you want to be successful in retirement or you don't. And that's really the road that we go down with each individual person, where, I think back to 20 years ago, the litmus test for if you were doing well was, well, how much did I make? How much money did I make? Today, that's not the litmus test. The litmus test is, hey, how long will my money last? And then, we talk a lot about in our office, and if you go to our website, btwealthshow.com, you can download our guide, How to Be Financially Successful, but also, what's the appropriate asset allocation that gives you the highest probability of success versus this is the greatest investment. We joke that, one investment may be the greatest for one person, but the worse for the next.
Yeah.
Based upon your sole situation and where you are financially and what you need to accomplish. So the litmus test of doing well is no longer what's your rate of return. We have a guide here where we talk about establishing a fair rate of return, because everybody's chasing, what cousin Eddie next door did or Uncle Joe did, and Bob, the financial guy. No, who's not a financial guy. He just watches CNBC. And now, what are they talking about on Reddit and, all this different stuff. It just clouds people's judgment on what they have to do. In reality, if people sit down, do a financial plan and come up and say, hey, I know if I make 6.5% on average the next 20 years, I'm successful. Well, then it doesn't matter what the neighbor does. It doesn't matter what the stock market does. As long as you're accomplishing your goal, it really helps people, tune out this media presence. And I don't think media is bad. You're the media. At some level, I'm like a mini media, right? For the people that follow my show and listen. But you have to know where you're getting this advice from and what the underlying, I should say, motivation for people to buy into this advice. I've been reading articles for the last 5 years. There's going to be a market crash. There's going to be a market crash. And I get calls and emails from clients. What do you think? I heard the market's going to crash. Well, yeah, it probably will. I just don't know when.
Right.
And you don't either.
Nobody's got a crystal ball, right?
I mean, the crystal ball, I wish I could name my firm Crystal Ball Financial. I'd have a line down the street and people would just show up and do business. But it's not reality in how things work. And that flow of technology and information is vastly changed from the time that you did the show, because I had a John Deere engineer in my office. This is probably 2 years ago. And this guy, he'd written like a software program for John Deere and how to analyze their health insurance. And John Deere said, hey, can we use that? He wrote it for his personal use. And they said, could we use it for all the employees? So this guy's like mega smart, right? I mean, he's making me feel silly.
Yeah.
And his wife's an ex-stockbroker, and she had to get up and go to the bathroom. And he goes, I figured out what it is you do. I go, really? Tell me, because you guys, you're super smart. I'm listening to you. He goes, what you've become is the ability for me to analyze my entire financial picture in about 30 seconds with the technology that you have versus that I'd have to build. Mm-hmm. And that's where he saw the value. So you talk about that shift of having to become a storyteller. We're almost becoming this technology resource for people, because ultimately there's so much information about what a good investment is, or what, you don't have to figure it out. It's so easy. Like you said, now we've transitioned to providing all this technological value to people that they can't do or they can't afford because they couldn't buy the software, or more importantly, they probably couldn't interpret the software. Mm-hmm. If you throw garbage in a computer, what comes out?
Right.
More garbage.
Yeah.
So, talk a little bit about do you see technology outside of your iPhone more in your industry helping with your storytelling? Is there any parallels you see there?
Well, two things. Just, from a logical, like a pragmatic standpoint, the smartphone has been good just because, I can now do. It's all different now because of the pandemic, and we're doing games. I'm broadcasting the road games off of a TV screen now from Minnesota instead of being at Purdue or at Iowa or what have you. So hopefully we get back to normal there. So we're using technology in different ways, but from an iPhone, just even pragmatically, if I'm at practice and all of a sudden something happens, I can run over to the coach and I can do an interview. I can just crank a tape on them. I don't need a tape recorder. I don't need a camera. I don't need to bring gear. I've got my iPhone in my jeans pocket. I pull it out and I tape an interview and email it to myself. I drive home, and by the time I'm home, I call up the interview, I cut it up, and I've got stuff for my sportscast. Like that, way back, not to go, when I first started at WMT, you needed a tape recorder, then you needed to re-record it into a system, and then you needed to, find where you wanted to start the soundbite and put it on this thing that looked like an 8-track. It was called a cart, and then start it and stop it, and then it would play on that thing, and we'd end up with a stack of sound bites on these carts. Well, now it's all on a computer, and I just hit a button and I cut it and I save it, and then I line up my cuts and I fire them off. So that really, obviously technology changed everything. Just you and me being able to sit 250 miles apart and seem like we're in the room next door is quite remarkable when you think about it. As things continue to move forward. And then you mentioned the day trading thing. I think also, I think there's a number of people now that might not be doing day trading just to strike it rich, or this is going to be part of my investment. Like you said, I think maybe they're bored. And you got E-Trade apps, and you've got Robinhoods and all these different things. And I don't think anyone's going to say, hey, I'm going to replace Roger and just start throwing all my money onto Robinhood. But I do think there are people who might have, $2,000 of play money or something. And, you know what? I'm just going to try. I'll buy a startup, or I'll, buy into. I've heard about this, or maybe they're just going to say I'm going to plow $2,000 into Amazon and double my money in 6 months, or what have you. So I think it's a hobby. I don't think I'm sure there are people who are trying to do it for a living. Even my son, he's a college student now, believe it or not. He's working part-time, so he's got a little bit of an income coming in now. He's doing some stuff on his phone where he bought Boeing stock the other day because he felt like, I don't remember. He was considering a bunch of stuff. So he bought like $50, you're right, or $100. And it's not, a kid that has a part-time job, that's a decent little chunk of money. He's still, funneling others into other areas. But I think you're seeing maybe some of that. Hobby, I guess, is how I'd call it. Like you said, maybe it's fulfilling a little bit of a need for some people. I don't know if it's gambling or what have you. But I do think just because it's easy. You got an app, okay, here's my money. And then again, like you said, it's instantly prints out. Here's what I've got in holdings. And all right, I'm going to move this. I'm going to sell this. I'm going to buy that. And just to fill time in some cases. But I don't think it certainly is in relation to like, oh, I don't need an investment advisor. I don't need to have someone figure out with all the technology you guys provide, like the John Deere guys said. I mean, you need that now. People need that when you're like, I just turned 50 this year. I need someone that can tell me where, what my money's doing, and are we still meeting the goals we need, and when do you need to shift those goals and all that stuff. That said, if I'm sitting on my couch watching the basketball game tonight, I might click onto, I don't, but someone like me might click on, one of these apps that you can just buy and sell a stock and say, yeah, I'm going to throw $500 at this, or depending on if you're real rich, maybe you throw 1,000 or 10,000 or whatever. For me, it'd be like $10, but that's what you do. So I think there's maybe a resurgence in that kind of investing as well, which in a weird way, if there's enough of those people, can absolutely influence the stock market, right?
Well, we're 100% seeing that, and I think two things I take away from it is, number one, I think it's really neat that there is another generation that's excited about investing as there was 20 years ago, because I feel like that crash in 2001 and then 2008, 2009 took the steam out of a lot of people. I'm like, man, I just can't do this. I can't stomach this. And it seems like the kids today, or I shouldn't call them kids, but the younger adults, the millennials that are engaging in this Robinhood app, are really pretty, they're okay with the risk. Like, people talk and say they don't know the risk. I actually think they do know the risk. But what I think the resurgence of this whole day trading it was a creation of the app, because I didn't hear much of this talk in our industry until Robinhood rolled this app out like a year and a half ago, and it started picking up steam. And the sheer reason why, I think back to your show 20 years ago, if somebody called up Augie or Mark and said, hey, I have $300 to invest, well, they would have paid like $60 in fees just to make that investment. And it was almost like, no, we can't do it. Where now your son, who's sitting at home, has $50. He can make this trade for free. And I always tell people, they'll look back and say, man, I wish I would have done this, or I made a bad investment 20 years ago. Well, you know what the good news is? You actually did something. So your son's making an investment.
Right. Whether
it works out or not, that's not the point. He's engaged and thinking about his future. Now, it may be more because Robinhood has completely gamified this app, right? Like, you win these things called tendies. I don't know. It's got like fireworks going off. And I mean, I don't have the app, but they're coming under a lot of fire from the SEC about, hey, have you made this app more like a video game, which that goes a whole nother route of the whole video game culture. And, is this what's engaging people? But in my opinion, at some point they'll make some bad investments, but eventually the loss will hurt enough, but they'll still like to do it and say, okay, well, maybe I should go look at a more diversified mutual fund or exchange traded fund or whatever it is to keep going. I think it's absolutely captivating that your son's doing it. Now that said, I haven't got a call yet.
Yeah, I'll have to get him going. Well, and here's the other thing I think that's interesting about it. So he just really started it a couple weeks ago. Like he's maybe, I'm going to say, no more than 3 weeks into this, and he hasn't made a lot of trades. He doesn't have a great deal of money, but he is following it. Like you said, there's interest there, and every day he'll mention, because right now he's in an interesting situation. He goes to school about an hour from where we live. We live in the Twin Cities. He goes to Wisconsin River Falls, which is about an hour away. So he has a place there, but he's his classes are online, so he's got some buddies back here. So he'll come back and stay here a couple days a week and go back there and stay a couple days. It's not like it's a 6-hour drive. So I see him a lot, which is great. But almost every day he'll say, "Hey, we were up a little bit, we're down a little bit." And I'm like, "Buddy, you can't, if you're doing it, you can't write it out by the hour, I mean, you're going to kill yourself with stress. Calm down just a second. One, we've tried to tell them, look, it's not, don't be throwing money away that you can, throw money away that you can, and when I say throw, I shouldn't say throw money away. Put money into it that you can afford. If it hits zero tomorrow, you're not like wanting to go, jump off a bridge or something, I mean, and so I think he's doing that, but he is absolutely captivated by. I've not seen it. I don't know what the app looks like. It's interesting you mentioned that because he does enjoy. And it's amazing what young people find captivating now and how that might change the future. But he, when I was his age, I was watching Sports Center and watching games and interested in all that stuff. He literally watches videos of YouTube of people playing video games and commenting on it.
Yeah, the people are making tons of money.
Yeah,
to do it.
the guy that he watches every day has 800,000. It's a guy and like two girls that play video games and they comment on it and they post it on YouTube. My son watches their 40-minute show almost every day, and they're getting like 800,000 views a day. And I don't know what that translates into, but they're making hundreds of thousands of dollars playing a video game. I told my son, you should stop watching and start making the videos and get people to. To get people to watch that. But who would have thought that would even be something like he likes the commentary and he giggles and there's some profanity in there that's kind of funny and I can hear it in the other room and every now and then I'll even chuckle a little bit. But they're playing so he's watching them play a video game on his phone, on his smartphone, while they're, and then they just comment on it, and it's just so weird. But that's where we're at. So the Robin Hood thing, if you say it's like a video game, I'm sure that's part of why it's captured young people's, as you mentioned, young adults' imagination as well. But there is something valuable, I think, to just having somebody, whether it's $50 or $100 or $1 million, you've got an app, and like you said, the technology now is that you can see what it's doing by the hour, and in your case, for the most part, you can see what it does and how it projects and where the money is, and you've got all this great technology that you can sit down with somebody and basically plan the future and project the future.
Yeah, I think we're in for exciting times. We can talk how bad, how good or bad technology really is. Or information. We have more information today, so arguably, we make the joke in our office. We should be the healthiest the country's ever been. Like we have the best weight loss secrets out there.
Sure.
We're all just overweight because it's still human behavior that makes it. So I don't know. We have all this technology. We have all the social media, which social media, in my opinion, drives things faster. We've seen huge swings in markets. I mean, we saw a 38% drop followed by a recovery in 38 days. I mean, it was crazy. And I just feel like information's traveling faster because it's more readily available. I'm not sure people make better decisions, but the thing that I'm encouraged by is people deciding to become engaged at a young age, because if, most things, if you buy them and you hold them for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. So this is what I tell your son, if you buy this thing, plan on keeping it.
Right.
Like, let's not buy it to sell it. Buy things you like, right? You go to Starbucks, great. Own that. Own it for a long time, and most of those things will work out. And if we get a generation of young people to do that, they're going to be coming to me in 15 years saying, hey, I've saved all this money. But ultimately, what does it mean, right? Because just having more money, what are we quantifying success in life?
Right.
They're going to quantify, hey, can I retire? Can I retire at 50 or 55? And that's when we'll become valuable. But I think it's neat that we have a young generation that's getting engaged in saving money and getting excited about it, because most things if you're not excited about it, you won't do it. And you'll appreciate this. Aunt Candy was in my office right before I came here, okay?
Yep.
Dropping off some Valentine's Day gifts. And she said, hey, we'd really like to take Blakely out, which is my 5-year-old daughter, and have her get some tennis lessons. I said, you know what? She goes, what do you think? I said, I don't think so. And she goes, well, why? I said, she hasn't shown an interest. Like, if she's not excited about it,
Right.
well, she's not going to like doing it. So that's what I think the parallel to this is. If you get excited about it, you're going to keep doing it. It's kind of like an addiction, but if we make it a positive experience for people. So we're going to see the regulation that comes out of this long term, because there's going to be some new regulation. But you have any final thoughts for me, Mike? I appreciate you coming on here. You know, you could give us, this might be fun. Give us the rundown on what you think about Minnesota's chance at the tournament and what you think about the Hawkeyes.
There you go.
And how deep these Iowa Hawkeyes go. Give us your couple minute synopsis, since I actually have. I mean, how many times were you sportscast for the year?
Oh, I don't know.
Like
it's
3 or
been a
4
few.
times?
Yeah, once back in Iowa when I was at WMT in 1999, which was a good year. 99 was a good year because in just past the turn of the century, 2000 my son Jacob was born on January 5th, 2000. And at that time, remember, we thought the world was going to end because of, Y2K stuff. I'm doing a game. I'm actually doing a high school girls game at Marion against Vinton Shellsburg on WMT radio. It was a Tuesday night game. Karen Schulte was my color commentator, former Miss Basketball. And she was a longtime worker at both Farm News and Sports News, and then went to Channel 2 for a while. She's now into private business. But anyway, her and I were doing the game. My wife was pregnant. She was behind us. And at halftime, she's like, I think I'm having a baby. I'm like, well, sorry, you're going to have to hold on here. I got another half of basketball. And so sure enough, we go to the hospital that night. And the next day, 99. And then Jacob was born in January of 2000. About 10 days later, I find out I won Sportscaster of the Year, so it was kind of cool, and we moved on from there, went to St. Louis, and now in Minnesota. But I always enjoy, unfortunately, with the travel restrictions now, I can't get back home as much, and we weren't allowed to come down to Carver Hawkeye when Minnesota and Iowa played in January. And the Hawkeyes got some revenge on the Gophers one Christmas night. What more would you want to spend your Christmas night than at Williams Arena? And the Gophers won that game, crazy game in overtime, where the Hawkeyes had a 7-point lead with 40 seconds left and couldn't hit some free throws, and Minnesota hit some clutch shots and ended up winning in overtime. Well, I think Iowa clearly is in the tournament. Both these teams are kind of reeling a little bit, Roger. I think the Hawkeyes are 1-4 in their last 5. They got beat by Indiana twice in that stretch, and Ohio State, and the weird thing is, I think they've played okay in some of those games. They went cold, obviously, in that Indiana game, in that second half. I think I think some of it too is the Big Ten cannibalizes itself. I'm hopeful for the whole league that when the tournament starts, that they'll seeing some fresh faces and new blood. And there's always the other team's going to be unfamiliar, with that team. I think the Big Ten will have some teams this year that can make some runs, and I think Iowa's set up for it. I know that they give up a lot of threes, and I know they're a little suspect defensively, but I think that will in the tournament when they play that kind of 2-3, 3-2 zone, I think that'll be okay for a while because teams don't see zones very much. So, and look, when you have Garza, you can ride Garza a long ways. So if they get a couple bounces their way, it could be, this could be a potential Final Four team. Minnesota snapped a 3-game losing streak. They beat Nebraska. Nebraska is no good right now. Fred Hoiberg's trying to get them going. They're going to play this wicked schedule for the rest of this month. They might not win a game. Everyone's hoping that those games that got canceled, like Minnesota's supposed to play them in a makeup game, Iowa's supposed to play them in a makeup game, and they're praying that they do because they all need the wins, right? Because Nebraska's not very good. But the Gophers got the win Monday to snap the losing streak, but they've lost 6 of 8 as well. As if the tournament started tomorrow, they'd be in, but I think the Gophers still have some work to do. And it's going to be a really unique tournament, all in Indianapolis, very limited fans. And we'll see where it takes us.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. It's been fun as a Hawkeye fan to watch the team. It seems like most of the time we seem to have these good teams. We hit like these January, February blues. I don't know if the guys are losing their legs a little bit or what it is. They play a pretty up-tempo type of ball. I wish we played a little more defense. I read something. They had some metrics out there that I was kind of between 1 and 3 in offense and between 134th and 154th in defense.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, man, just a little more effort. But maybe they'll bring that at the game. And I wish the Gophers the best too, Mike. I know I've watched them. It seems like they're pretty athletic and have some fun players to watch.
Very.
And, I'm a fan of Rick Pitino Jr. I think he's a captivating guy. Maybe it's because we watched his dad, before that, but he seems to be a pretty captivating guy too.
He's great. I love working with him. I know you get in the rivalries. It's almost like politics now. You have to hate. If you're a Hawkeye, you have to hate anything to do with the Gophers. It's like if you're a Trump person, you have to hate anything with the other side, and if you don't like Trump, you have to hate everything. There's middle ground to be had. So I know the Iowa folks listening are going to say, "What? He thinks Richard Pitino's a good dude." Trust me, he's unbelievable. He's great to work with. He's funny. He's a smart aleck like I am, so we get along great. He'll text me in the middle of the day about just making fun of me, and I'll fire back a text. And he's a great guy to work with. And they're a little bit of a schizophrenic team. They have maybe the best win in the country, right? They beat Michigan. The Gophers did, and Michigan's only loss. Michigan's ranked 3rd. The 2 teams ranked ahead of them have no losses. So you think who has, so Michigan, the number 3, the only loss amongst the top 3 was a loss handed to them by Minnesota. But then, they've also lost at home to Maryland, which and they got beat bad by 12 points. And they haven't won a road game, Minnesota. They're 11-1 at home and like 0-6 on the road. So they're very inconsistent, but they have enough quality wins that, like I said, they're in decent shape for a tournament. They still have work to do. The schedule's favorable, so they should if they get 3 or 4 more wins, they should be in pretty good shape. And then, as they say, you get a chip and a chair, and you got a chance when you get to Indianapolis, hopefully.
Yeah, I like that. Mike, I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you're busy. I thought this would just be a fun show to kind of look back 20 years ago and how things are just coming kind of back to where they were 20 years ago, just delivered in a different way. All the listeners out there, if you do me a favor, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. We always appreciate you guys to support us. And Mike, hopefully you'll come back and do this again.
Absolutely. Anytime. I loved it. I really had a good time. Thanks.
All right. Well, it's great seeing you again. And we'll check you out next time for the Behind the Well show. This is Roger Abel, btwellshow.com. Thank you.